Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Custom Carving and Epoxy UK. I hope you're all doing well. And in some ways I'm sorry, in some ways I'm not. I'm going to do another bloom. I'm really into them at the minute and I've got so many different ideas in my head at the moment. I just want to try them all. So that's what this is going to be. And I'm going to try and do it in almost 3 different styles in one bloom. So the plan is I'm going to do one of my little bubble centers because I quite like the way that they look with UV resin. I'm then going to do mica petals around the center and try and pipe them in quite intricately. Then I'm going to try and go over that with sort of longer sort of white bloom petals with a little bit of iridescent powder in, just to see if I can get all of these effects in one bloom. So it's going to be interesting. All I'm going to do first, just so it can be warming up whilst I'm doing the rest of it, is just mix up. The mold takes about 4 ounces, so probably about 4 ounces of resin. I'm going to be using the T-Expert medium viscosity resin for this as well. And then I'm going to put it in the bubble remover, and then we can get on to creating the centers whilst that is warming up. So as I said, first thing I'm going to do is just mix that resin up. And whilst you're here, guys, as well, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. I really appreciate people subscribing. I'm hoping that that means that you're liking the content, although nobody's actually put in comments whether or not they do or don't. So it would be great to just hear if you guys are actually liking the experiments I'm doing, or if there's something completely different that you want me to do. So as I say, just going to mix up 4 ounces of this resin first of all. As I know that that's what this mold takes. I've got some new molds on order as well, so I'm excited about that. Hopefully when they come through, it'll give us some different projects to do. I was really happy with my last drip project as well. So basically it was a little French bulldog. So I've been doing the drip dragons, and I've got about 8 of them now. And I just did this little French bulldog as a drip mold, and I think it came out really well. So I'm absolutely loving that at the minute. And it just goes to show you guys, don't waste your resin. Have a separate mold by the side of you, and then just drip it in, you know? You never know what you're gonna get. You might get a masterpiece, you might get something that looks like a mess. So that's my part A. Now for my part B. And again, don't forget, guys, if there's anything you want me to try, any experiments that you've been thinking about that you want to see if somebody else messes up first, put it in comments. We will get it done. My aim is to try and get at least 3 or 4 videos out a week at the minute, so that hopefully we can all grow and continue on this learning journey with resin together. I'm amazed with some of the results we've been getting recently. But don't forget, guys, when it comes to blooms, doesn't matter how many you do, you will get some that don't work out. So do not get disheartened, just continue. And I mean, I've had some pretty amazing results, and I've also had some shockers, like the last ones. So the last video that we did, I don't know if you saw it, but I mixed up those almost 4 different metallic colours. And then I tried it in a split cup with 5 different sections, and unfortunately it was impossible for me to control it. It literally was impossible to pour, and they kind of came out a blobby mess. Wasn't too bad though, because the colours I used, I quite liked it afterwards, but it wasn't a perfect bloom by any means. So all I'm trying to say with that is do not get disheartened when you're doing your blooms. Some will work, some won't. It's as simple as that. And you could do 2 exact blooms exactly the same way at the exact same temperature, and they could look completely different. So don't get disheartened. Keep on going, because you don't know what the next experiment is going to bring. So I'm going to be back in a second. Just going to mix this up, put it in the bubble removal machine, then we'll create the centers for this bloom. There we go. So the resin is in the bubble removal machine. Now I'm just going to use this jewellery mold to create the centre. I don't think I want it too large, because I want the petals to still be the main focus. But I'm probably going to want it this sort of size, I think. So this is the mold size that I'm going to use. I'm going to be using the Apex UV resin to create it. And all I'm going to do, first of all, tip it upside down, so hopefully I don't get any air bubbles in there. I've had that a few times. And then what we're going to do is just use the bubble effect to create these centres. Now I'm going to go with blues mainly for this bloom. As you can probably tell by the side of me, I've got a couple of blue micas. And I'm hoping I've still got some blue chameleon as well, because I'm just going to add some of that, I think, if I can find the blue. It's always the colour that you... there we go, so I've got a lovely blue chameleon as well from Let's Resin there. So that's predominantly going to be the main colour for these centres, because I want it to sparkle. I want the centre to not be the main focus, but I still like a bit of a sparkle. And I'm not planning to fill these all the way up. Probably about halfway initially. Then I'm going to put the bubbles on, and then we're going to top it off as well. So literally all I'm doing, UV resin in the mould, round about halfway, so that is there. And I'm going to do 2 and then pick the best one. And that's all I'm doing at the minute. You can see that UV resin reasonably equal there. And they're going to be my centres, hopefully. Next, I've got some dish soap or washing up liquid and water by the side of me. And again, yes, you can do it with a straw, but you're not going to get the small bubbles that I want for this technique. Literally, all I'm using is a popsicle stick to just shake it from side to side and create lots of tiny bubbles, which is going to create almost that centre effect that I want. Because I want the small ones, I don't want large bubbles for this technique, because, as I say, the centres aren't going to be huge, they're going to be quite small. And I'm just hoping that this is going to work. We will see. As I say, that's the great thing I think with resin. Some of your projects work amazing, others turn out to be blobby messes, as I call them. So just going to get my popsicle stick and get some of those bubbles. And you're going to need 2 sticks usually for something like this. And then all I'm doing, putting them over the top completely of that mould. And I don't want any that are too big. I want them to be quite small. But as long as it's covered, I know that that's going to work. Right, next stage, UV lamp. And I'm going to cure this, he says. Helps if he plugs it in. So I'm just going to cure it. Probably 60 seconds should be enough for this. It's quite a thin layer at this point. And all I'm using is a bog standard nail UV lamp. So 60 seconds, then we'll dry it off, put the chameleon mica powder in there, and then just give it a slight top layer just to flatten everything off. And then they're going to be our centres, whichever one looks the best, to be honest with you. And you can probably hear the bubble removal machine in the background, so apologies about that, but I want to get this done. I want to get this out there. I want to see if we can get this design working, because I'm just curious as to what it will look like with 2 different styles of petals, almost in 2 different ways, in the same bloom is the plan. Whether it turns out like that is another matter, so we'll find out together. And again, I love to mix and match techniques, so that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm going to try and do the centre petals with the mica, and then keep the outer petals with the ocean white bloom and a little bit of iridescent powder. So you can see there now, you can still see the bubbles on the surface. So what you need to do before you put your powder on is just make sure you dry it off with a little bit of kitchen roll, like so. And then hopefully we can dry it off completely. And what I tend to do is, once I've dried off the excess bubbles, is just give it another 10-20 seconds under the lamp, and that makes sure that everything is completely dry at that point. I need to get myself a better UV lamp as well, because this one I think is on its last legs. As you can see, I'm just hoping it's got enough in it to finish this project off. But I will get a new one ordered, I think, because I think I've had this one for about 4 months and they do die on you. There we go, but that should be dry enough. I'm just checking my power bank as well, and that's got plenty of power left in it, so it's not that. It is definitely the lamp that has probably had it. Only cost me 3 or 4 quid from Temu, so that is probably why. But as you can see, we've now got those little tiny bubbles in that centre, which are hopefully going to look good. So I'm just going to get the chameleon powder from Let's Resin and dust those with a standard paintbrush. You don't need a lot, a tiny bit like that on the end of your brush should be enough, but it should give us a nice sparkly centre for both of these, like so. And that's pretty straightforward. Again, I like to sort of really brush it in though, so it almost burnishes it a little bit, and I think you get a much better sparkle by doing that. Now it's up to you if you want to go in with black or if you want to go in with clear. I know that I'm going to be going over the top of these anyway, so they're probably still going to have quite a dark look. So I'm just going to go on over the top with a tiny bit of clear UV resin, and literally a tiniest bit. And all I'm trying to do is create that flat surface. So one blob like that in the center of each, and then I'm just going to spread that round. Again, use your dotting tool or whatever you've got to hand. And I just want to spread that out so it just seals in that mica powder. And that's all I'm doing. Also slightly flattens it out, and as it self-levels, you should get a reasonably flat surface so it doesn't interrupt any blooming effect that you're going to have. So again, just going around it, try not to scrape it too much, otherwise you will scrape those mica powders off that you've just put in. And then I'm going to give that another 30 seconds or so, providing I can get the lamp working. The resin has just gone off in the bubble removal machine, so I'm just going to get that out now, and it should hopefully be crystal clear, which it is. And I'm just going to test the temperature of it. There we go, it's only 22.5 at the minute, so that means I've probably got another 10 minutes or so to play. I'm going to aim for around about 34, 35 degrees, because I've been finding that even with the heavy micas, it's been blooming really well at those temperatures. And if you haven't got a bubble removal machine, guys, I do recommend them. Mine's from Resiners, it's the Earless Pro, and if you want a discount code for that, I've got one for you, which is CCUK. It will get you some money off. So again, have a look if you want one. I think they've made such a difference to my resin work. And there we go. Hopefully you can see we've got those nice sparkly centers. I'm going to demold them. Look at that. I just love that effect, the bubble effect. It's one of my favorite techniques, and it is so simple, guys. So if you haven't tried that yet, try it. And as I said, I didn't want the center to be too big for this, because I didn't want it to take over from the petals. I still want them to be the main effect. But once you've done this, you'll see, if you're doing it in Jura mold, you're going to get those little edges. And all you do is get yourself a pair of scissors, if I can find them. There we go. And just snip round it to make sure it's all even. Simple as using a pair of scissors. And it will give you a perfectly round finish then once you've gone around those edges. So again, if you can just see, there's that tiny little edge there. Use your scissors and snip it off. Happy with that one. And then this one as well, it's got that tiny little bit on the edge there. Just going to snip it off, and that bit, and that bit. Just because I want them to still look round. I want a nice round centre for these. And then it's a case of deciding which one I'm going to use in the bloom. So these are my two centres that I've just done. And the question is, which one? I think you're going to use this one. I think I quite like that for the centre. So that is going to be the centre of the bloom. So that is step one. Step two is thinking about what colours I'm going to use whilst that's heating up. So I've got this blue pear dry colour, which is quite a nice sparkly blue. And I've also got this slightly lighter haze. Now what I'm going to do is mix the two colours together, because I like to mix my micas and I like to get unique colours that nobody has done before. And because I've used that chameleon in the centre as well, I'm going to put a tiny bit of that in. So literally you don't need a lot. And the risk is when you use micas in a bloom, guys, you can go too heavy and get a blobby mess. You don't need a lot. So because I'm going to be using almost 3 separate ones and mixing them together, that is probably how much of each I'm going to put on, if you can see that. So that is that haze. Again, try not to do it over your mould because mica powders like to get absolutely everywhere. Now the key to this design, what I'm thinking, is going to be my piping skills, which if you've seen any of my previous videos, they're not great. So we will see together if I can get this to work. I'm hoping I can. So again, just tiniest bit of mica, mixing it in there. So that's a slightly darker shade. And then for my third mica in this mix, I'm going to go back to that chameleon powder and put a tiny bit of that in. There we go. So that is my 3 different micas that I'm using for hopefully the central petals that I'm going to pipe in. And again, when that's all mixed together, it will create one brand new colour. So that's going to be that. For the centre, I'm going to be using Ocean White from Resin. There we go. And I'm going to be using some iridescent blue powder that I got from Temu as well, because that should just give a nice blue sparkle to those outer petals, I'm hoping, is the plan. So I'm going to come back when the resin's up to temperature. So I'm aiming for it to be, as I say, around about 34, 35 degrees. So that should be with this resin in about 10 minutes time. So I'll see you in 10 minutes and then we'll go through stage 1. Hey guys, the resin's still warming up, but I just wanted to show you what I meant in my earlier comment. So I've pretty much been doing a bloom at least every 2 days for the last month or so to try and perfect the technique. And I still don't think I'm perfect yet, but it's getting there. And these are probably some of my best. I absolutely love this one. Just because of the form of those petals, the colours, it is almost perfect to me. That is a great result. This is my other probably favourite result. Again, just because the colours, the shimmer, the way the petals formed organically, the sparkle on the background, I think it's again, to me, that's almost perfect. But I've also had some shockers. So again, look at that. That is just a mess. Again, some haven't gone quite as bad, but they've still blobbed, and I've not been happy with the overall result. So some people have asked, what do I do with them if they don't work out? Go back, watch one of my previous videos about how to reuse your resin. And this is what happens to them. Literally, I recycle them into these little pieces that I can either use as mosaics and clear resin, or I can fill with black resin and chameleon in sort of larger molds, and you won't even know they're in there, but it saves me using up more resin. So always recycle your projects that haven't gone right, you know, because resin's expensive, and you can create some really, really good effects with these. So never waste your resin from projects that haven't gone right. Don't throw them away. All I do, again, save you going back and watching the video, pour boiling water over it, which makes it more flexible. Get some tin snips, snip it into strips, and then cut it into little tiny cubes like this, and they can be reused in whatever project I want. So that's just a bit of a bonus tip to show you what I do if projects don't work out. And as I say, eventually, hopefully, you're going to get results that do, like these, which are absolutely stunning, and I've got these on display in my house. These ones aren't on display and are ready for recycling. So I'll be back in 2 minutes, get gloved up again, respirators on, and then we'll continue with the project. There we go, that is better. Always remember your safety as well, guys. Try and get a respirator on, even if your resin says safe, and always wear gloves, you know, it always helps. We're at 31.3, so probably another 2 or 3 minutes to go, but that just gives me time to get ready for everything that I'm going to need for this bloom. The more organised you can be with blooms, the better. If everything's ready to go, and look, I can see a little bit of tiny mica powder there, and that was because I was holding it over the mould. So again, I'm just cleaning it And I am excited to get some new molds coming through as well, so I can do some different designs. But again, I really like this, and it was only a cheap one from Temu. I think it gives you a really nice flower shape, which is what you're wanting. Maybe one too many petals for me though. I think it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's got 8. If it had had 7, I think it'd be perfect. And I've decided with this one as well to go all in. So I'm going to be using alcohol ink as well. So alcohol ink, mica, and the standard white petals as well, hopefully, is the plan. Whether it goes that way, I don't know. So just gonna, I've got my blue ready. So I'm going to get the white ingredients ready, and this is just a blue iridescent powder. Again, I'll be honest, I got it from Temu, but it's given me a really nice effect in the past. When I put it just in my bloom paste, my petals, it's just given it a very, very slight shimmer, which is what I like in the petals, because I still want white to be the main colour. And that's all I'm going to put in, that tiniest of bits, because again, I don't want it to be too heavy. And just look, you can see that shimmer already. Not too much, but I just think that will bring the whole piece together if it works. And then, as I say, I've got my piping bags at the side of me ready as well, because I tend to have more control with piping bags than pouring straight from the cup. I don't know how people can do that, pouring straight from the cup. As I say, it must take years of practice, but I'm going to stick with the piping bags to hopefully give me more control, because I'm going to try a slightly different shape of petal for these centre ones using the mica. And then the standard sort of bloom petals for these outer ones, if it works. And I do say if, it's the first time I've tried this. But I always like to try with you guys whether things go right or wrong. So that is at 32.3 at the surface. But remember, the base, look at that, it's only 28.4. So I'm not going to go with this yet. I want the base to be at least 30 degrees before I continue, because what you're trying to do is get your resin to a point where it's a little bit thicker. So this is a medium viscosity resin, but once it gets a little bit thicker, there's less chance of blobbing. And it's not guaranteed. I have tried different experiments where I've put a little bit of PVA glue in there, and that seems to work. It seems to stop blobbing and almost spreads it out a little bit more evenly. So I am going to try that with this project as well, because I haven't tried it with just the standard bloom petals to see if it affects the bloom. So I am going to try that, and all it is once I've pulled my colours, one tiny drop of clear PVA glue in there, and it almost creates a bit of a barrier, I think, to stop the blobbing. Whenever I've done that, I've not had those big dots of blobbing. So again, I'm not sure if it's guaranteed to work, but it seems to work for me, and that's all you're trying to do with resin. Again, I haven't put alcohol inks on after doing that yet, so that's going to be interesting to see if they spread differently, but we're going to find out together in this experiment. So it's going to be really interesting, hopefully. So we're at about 33 degrees on the surface. I'm happy to mix my colours at this point, and all I'm going to do is literally, in fact, I haven't put my bloom in there yet. So again, this ocean white is what I'm going to be using. Give it a good shake so the pigment mixes up, and I'm just going to put one drop, hopefully, in here. Literally, if you can see this, and these go a really long way because you need the tiniest of amounts. So there we go, just coming out now, one drop and a little bit of string. That is all you need with this Let's Resin Ocean White for sort of half a cup. So that's probably what, an ounce. But that's all I should need. And what I have started doing, I don't know if it makes a difference, is just putting 2 or 3 drops of Sinker White in there as well. And again, I don't know if it makes a difference. I saw somebody say that it helps the bloom spread a little. I don't know if it does, to be honest, but for the sake of putting a few drops in there, I've not had bad results by doing it, so that's what I go by. And again, just try and keep your gloves clean. Look at that, that's just from touching that white bloom bottle. And I do try and reuse my gloves, but again, I don't get too many projects out of them. So again, just going to go in with the blue first and say half a cup, no more than that, because this is just going to be for that centre. And I think that's going to be Around about right, so half a cup of that. And the same for my white over here, just putting half a cup in there, like so. And then what I'm going to do is put one tiny drop, and literally so tiny, watch. That is it, one little tiny drop, if you can just see it on the surface there. And it almost turns your resin into a bit of a slime-like substance. So I'm gonna let you watch as I do this. So literally, I've already put it through the bubble removal machine, so I don't wanna do this very fast because I don't want to introduce bubbles. But look at that already. It's going a lot thicker and it almost turns it into a slime. You wanna make sure that you've mixed it well before you pour it. But look, it almost turns it into a gel-like consistency. It is so bizarre. And that's from the tiniest little drop. But what I have found is since doing that, I haven't had those dots of blobbing that you sometimes get. So that is that. I'm still gonna leave that in the pot for now, whilst I just mix up these colors. So this is the blue. And again, with your micas, make sure you really mix them, especially if you've put the mica powder in first. Otherwise you will get unmixed. And I'm loving that as a color. That is stunning. And hopefully those chameleon bits will still pop in the petals. So that is my blue. And I just got a feeling, guys, so I will pre-warn you, I've got a feeling this project is all gonna go wrong. I have that feeling, especially when I get adventurous with projects. Which is 90% of the time, to be honest with you. And it's always a nice surprise when they don't go wrong for me. I don't know if anybody else has that feeling, but I almost expect every project to go wrong until it proves me otherwise. So that's my blue in the bag, pretty much ready to go. In fact, I'm gonna get it ready to go. And all you do with that, just get your piping bag, give it a squeeze, and I think that'll be more than enough. Give it a twist. That is that blue colour that hopefully I'm going to use for the centre petals, hopefully being the operative word. And then this is the white with the iridescence, and look at that blue iridescent already just coming through. And the trick is with your white, as I say, you don't want it too opaque. You still want to be able to see the stick, so I can still see that Galaxy logo behind it. So I think we're going to be okay. It's a little bit more opaque because of the iridescent blue powder, but I think it's going to be okay for this. So again, just going to pour that into this one ready. And I'd say if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. You know, you've only wasted 4 ounces of resin, but hopefully you get something right. And I've got something in that there. A little bit of cured resin. Don't know where that's come from. But again, just getting it all in there because I don't want to run out. And that is that. And this is what I mean, that tiny bit there is going to go in my drip mould as well. So when I talk about my drip dragons and things like that, that's what I mean. Those spare bits of resin at the end of each project, I just pour them into a mould, and whatever happens, happens. It normally takes 4 or 5 projects, but eventually I get a full piece, whether it's a dragon, whether it's a French bulldog. They're what I call my drip projects. So I have no control over it apart from the colours that I'm choosing in my projects. And there's that one. Be careful when you're squeezing your bags, guys. You don't want to squeeze it out the back. Trust me, I've done that before as well. It goes absolutely everywhere. So, there are my colours ready. I'm going to leave those there for a second. And then I'm just going to check the temperature of this now because I'm interested. So it's still sort of 32 degrees, which is okay. I'm going to pour it in here, get the bubbles out, then put my alcohol inks on. Then we're going to pipe. So look at that, it's almost like slime. It's so bizarre. And that's just that one drop of PVA glue. So I'm going to pour it in. I like to pour this around the petals first. And as I say, it's like kids slime once you've added that PVA. But I have found it almost acts as a barrier to blobbing. I don't think it's a new technique at all. I just think it's something that I've experimented with and it works for me, specifically when I'm using micas, because they are heavier than your standard alcohol inks. in your blooms, and they're the ones that tend to blob if you're going to get it. That and your ocean white. So that's that. Move this to the side, and now what I'm going to do is just have a look around, and I'm hoping that that isn't in, it is in the resin. So there we go. Let's get that out. There we go. Don't want bits in your resin. And then I'm going to get my silicone tool, go around the edges, because in any mould, that's where your bubbles will like to hide. Then if you get a great result, you come to demould your piece and you get a hole at the top. So just literally go around the edges. And as I say, it's such a strange consistency. When you try it, you'll see what I mean. You'll think you've ruined your resin, but you haven't. It's just like a kid's slime. And it's so interesting that one little drop completely changes the whole consistency of the resin. There's one bubble there that's determined to stay, but I can't see any more. So that's my bubbles. Now I'm just gonna torch the top just to get rid of any surface bubbles that might be there. Again, when you're torching, especially if you're using a flame, make sure you don't go too close to your edges. And don't leave it in one spot for too long, because that's what will bond your resin to your mould. Now, as I say, I'm going to be trying to use the alcohol inks as well. Now, I want to put my centre in now as well, just to make sure that's covered. And I think that's the one I said I'm going to go with. So I'm going to try and get it reasonably central at this point, which I think is roughly there. Let me know how far off I am. And then I'm just going to put a tiny bit of resin, what I've got left in my pot, over the surface to make sure it's completely covered in resin like that, because I don't want it to affect the bloom or anything like that. I just want it to be a nice centerpiece for the bloom. And again, once you've done that, just torch it again quickly, because there's probably going to be a couple of surface bubbles in there from you introducing the piece. But there we go, that is completely covered in resin, and I can just see a tiny bubble on the underside. So I'm just going to squeeze that up to the top like that and give it a quick torch. And I'm not sure if that's something in my resin or not, so I'm going to have a look, and yes it is. It's amazing how many bits you get in your resin once you've poured it. But I'm happy with that. I think that is reasonably central to me. Now I'm going to go in with my alcohol ink. So remember, after this point, do not use a flame, because you can set it on fire. My plan is here, I want one drop of the dark in the center, and then on the outskirts of that dark, I'm going to do a lighter color. So I'm going to use the sapphire blue in the center, and then cerulean around the edges. Again, I'm using the Let's Resin alcohol inks. And I just want one drop in the center, like so. And I think it's going to be interesting here to see what effect, if any, I get from using the alcohol inks and the mica and the bloom. And then I'm going to go around this. 1, 2, 1 drop for each petal. And that's it. Because I still want to leave a little bit of an edge, so that I can still see some white, because I do like to see the white. And it's important to let your inks settle before you actually do your bloom, because they can impact the bloom effect. So I'm just going to give those a second to settle. I think they're reasonably settled now. And now for the most challenging part, I think, of this project, which is going to be the small petals. And literally, I want tiny petals, almost drawn in, going around that first half. So I'm going to try and cut this really small, probably about 1 or 2 mils, because I don't need it to spread too much, because I've got the alcohol ink as well, and because it's quite coloured. So I don't need it to spread. I just hopefully need it to just trickle out really slowly, so that I can try and pipe my design in. So just giving it a gentle squeeze now to see if I can get any out. There we go. And that is how small a line we're talking. So I am going to have to squeeze this because, again, it's because of how small I've done it. So I'm just going to practice here for a second. And this is what I'm going to try and do. Is literally like that around it. But this is going to be very interesting because those of you that have seen my previous projects, I'm not the best at piping. So here we go. I'm just going to go for it. And I want them to come out from the center like so. And as I say, this is the most detailed I've ever tried to pipe. So far it seems to be going okay. And let me know in comments, guys, do you think this is going to work, or do you think I'm going to have a blobby mess? One of the two will happen, of that I'm pretty sure. And I'm going to do this probably about a third of the way. I'm not bothered about it looking perfect, looking even, because in nature I don't think anything does fully. I just want to try and avoid any blobs. So as you can see, it's because it's so small, it tries to blob out rather than come out in a nice even line. But again, I'm going to persist. And that actually went in the resin, which you don't want to do. So I just want it to settle on that surface and look relatively even, almost rounded little petals. And I can see I've done it slightly uneven now, but this is probably going to be my last row. Again, slightly different shapes, and some of these will pull in and some won't. So now, just to try and even it up, these outer ones I'm just going to go back on and do another little row. Now just having a look from above, and I think that's reasonably even. Maybe try and get one more in here. And this is the most, as I say, the most detailed I've ever tried to pipe in, guys. So it's not perfect, but I just want it almost to go to the outskirts of where the inks have settled. And I'm happy with that. I think, apart from that little bit there, is missing a little bit. But as you can see, I've not gone in too heavy. If anything, I've gone in a little bit too light. But I'm confident, he says, that the resin will pull in and make them look reasonably even. And I love that glisten I've got there. So that's my blue. Just going to fold up the end as well, like that, which means that it's not all going to spill out everywhere, and hopefully I can reuse that. Now again, this is going to be interesting because I've never piped the petals this way before. I want more white than I did with those, because the white is what's really going to bring this inwards and hopefully create this nice bloom. I'm not sure what's going to happen to these either, because I'm literally going to go like that, hopefully. And as I say, I'm not the best at piping, so we will see. And I'm expecting, because I've cut the hole slightly bigger, this will naturally flow like that. There we go. So again, starting at the top, and I'm just going to do these edges first, and then I'm going to bring them in a little bit, because don't forget, I'm still going to be drawing my petals in, which is what will join everything together. But let me know in comments, guys, do you think this is going to work and we're going to get a lovely bloom or not? And then what I'm going to do is, I do want these to come in. So again, the only way that's going to happen is if there is some white coming in the edges. So I'm just going to do this, and I am going to go back over this and try and pull everything out, but I don't want it to be blob, so I don't want it to be too heavy. Bit like that. And now I'm just gonna, I still want to go around it with really thin spirals, because that's what's going to create layers. And hopefully these will be quite wishy-washy. But I don't want to do too much either. I think I'm happy with that. I think that's enough that it should bloom. And what I'm going to do is, as I say, I'm still going to pull them in from the centre like that. And you're just tickling the surface. And it's going to be really interesting to me as to if this is going to work at all, for a start. And if it does, what it's going to look like. It's the first time I've used mica and alcohol inks in the same project. First time I've piped this design. So there's lots of firsts again. Now I don't want to swirl it because I don't want to lose the petals that I've put in. Now these outer ones, I am going to bring them out like that. And just try and get a tiniest bit of that alcohol ink that I'm pulling through. And then it'll be a case of praying that the resin does its stuff. And I'm hoping to still get some of those tiny blooms, petals that I actually piped in stay. Now, the alcohol ink's settled now for a little bit, so I can still hopefully torch it without setting it on fire. I wouldn't recommend you guys do this. I've done it a few times myself with no ill effects, but again, I wouldn't recommend using fire once you've used the alcohol ink at all. And that's pretty much all I can do now, apart from pray. I don't know if I've got enough white in those petals for it to bloom fully. I don't know if I'm going to still see the mica ones that I piped in when it does, if it does bloom. So that's all an experiment at this stage. And I don't know if I'm going to get a blobby mess, to be honest, but that's all I can do now. I'm going to come back in 20 minutes and let you see. But as you can see, I've still got probably about an ounce of resin spare that are in these. So this is a drip dragon that I've got going at the moment. And all I'm going to do is pipe in the rest of this blue around the sides. In fact, I can probably cut it a little bit larger now. There we go. And then I'm going to go in afterwards with the white. And this will just create the next layer of this drip dragon. And a few of you put in comments that you wanted to know what I meant by a drip dragon. And this is it. So literally when I do a bloom, any spare, I'm just piping into this mould. And whatever it creates, it creates. But it stops you wasting any as well. So here we go. This is just going to form that next full colour layer, like so. And it doesn't look, I don't know, it looks like it's trying to bloom. I was going to say it doesn't look like it's blooming yet, but it does look like it's trying. So hopefully we're still going to get something. We'll find out tomorrow regardless, because I do show my failures as well as my successes, because I think it's all part of the learning journey of working with resin is resin. It's about learning from your mistakes as well, and knowing that not every project goes the way you hope it's going to go. As I say, I'm still really hopeful that I'm going to get a nice effect with this, but there's no guarantees. So I'm going to come back in about 20 minutes to half an hour, show you guys what it looks like at that point. It should give us an indication as to whether or not we're going to get a nice piece. So I'll see you guys shortly. Hey guys, I'm back. It's probably been about 4.5 hours. So if I touch this now, it's still slightly tacky, but I think it's set enough to put a back on. And after the last project, I think I deserve a success with this one. So I'm hoping it's going to be a success. I've mixed up about 80 ml of resin. which should give this a nice back. And I've been thinking about what I want to do with it. And I think I want to try and get a different effect on the back. So I'm going to pour a tiny bit of the resin into this cup. Not a lot, just a tiny bit like that. And a tiny bit into this cup. You might be thinking, what's he going to do? I know I am, but I'm just going to try something. So I've got about half of that clear resin still left. And I want to try and get those striation effects on the back, almost the crackling effect, if I can. And it's a big if at this point, because if you watch my last video, you'll see sometimes things do go completely wrong. And I think when you work with resin, it's just one of the risks. Not every project's going to go the way that you want it to. Now, I want this to be quite a dark background because I want these white petals, which look like they've bloomed on the outside, to stand out. But I don't want it too dark. So what I'm going to do, I've got a, where is it? A blue metallic pigment paste, and it keeps it in the blue theme. But what I'm going to try and do is trickle another colour into that blue, push it all out with the clear, and see if that creates a different effect. I don't know at the minute. So again, I'm going to start off with the blue metallic, and it's quite a thick concentrated pigment paste. Very thick, in fact. So I'm just going to stir it around the pot, and it's a really thick consistency, this one. And scrape off whatever I can off the stick, because it's only going to need the tiniest of amounts to mix into that resin. So that'll be my blue. Now that's going to be quite heavy. I know this. I've not completely lost the plot just yet. And I'm thinking copper. I don't know why. Blue and copper. It's a strange colour combo. But I love copper, and I just think it'd be interesting if it does streak or striate or whatever you want to call it. It's an effect that I haven't seen before, so it'll be interesting. So again, just the tiniest, and I probably shouldn't be doing this over the piece. In fact, I don't even need that much because there's hardly any in there. Resin, I mean. Maybe just a touch more. And I think that'll be enough. I did that really successfully. Didn't get it on the back of the piece. I'm very surprised at that. And that's it. So I'm going to mix up the blue. And this, I think, is going to be the main colour. And anything extra, I have got my dragon mould to fill back up. And I'm just going to put, as I say, a thin layer of each of these around the edge. Pour the clear into the centre. Hopefully that's going to push it out a little and bring it back into sort of that striation effect. It might work, it might not. But, you know, this channel is all about having fun. It's all about trying different effects. And do you know what? If I get a great effect from just doing this, it gives me an idea for another bloom without mucking about with the 3D bloom. But I am hopeful that we're going to get a good result. Look at that copper. I just absolutely love that colour. And I don't even know where I got these micas from. If I did, I would be getting them again just for that colour. It's absolutely gorgeous. So just make sure you fully mixed your colours. And again, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't want to move it either. I don't want to move the while the bloom is still potentially setting, because I don't want to risk it going everywhere. So I'm going to go around the edge first of all with this blue if I can. Scrape off what I can. And most of that pigment is still on the stick. That's how concentrated it is. But literally, I just want to get a thin layer into each of these petals, as close to the edge as I can, like so. And I think this will give me quite a good dark outline. I want to keep it as even as I can. But as you've probably seen from this video and previous, I am not the best at pouring. I'm actually getting better at piping than pouring, which is very strange. Because I've never been very good at piping either. So there we go. That is that blue outer layer, as it were. And I'm hoping I've left this long enough as well. I'm not confident I have. But we'll find out a demold never rush things. So that is my blue. And I want that to be the main colour, with hopefully small flashes of this copper just running through, is the plan. So I'm going to pour this actually just in the blue, I think. And I want it to be kind of streaky like this, a little bit all over the place. Just so that hopefully it might give us some different lines coming through. And then I'm going to do a very thin layer just in front. And again, I don't know if this is going to work, guys. It is just part of experimenting with resin. There we go, I'm happy with that. And I've got a little bit of spare for my dragon molds. So, now the plan is literally I'm just going to push a bit around the sides of the clear, like so, and then into the centre we go, and let that push it all out. Not pushing it as much as I'd hoped, but again, I can add a little bit more. There we go, that's now pushing it out to the edge, and I'm hoping I haven't overfilled it at this point. If I get a slight doming, I'm happy with that. And I think that's enough. I think it has pushed it out. I think it's slightly domed. So, again, this dragon drip mold is nearly full. So I'm going to empty what I've got left of these two colours. Don't forget, like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Morning, guys, and it's the next day, and I'm excited for this. The back has turned out lovely, where all those colours are pulled in. So I'm just hoping we haven't had blobbing. And again, the drip dragon is ready as well. So I'm gonna demold the dragon first and see what he has turned out like, or she, or whatever he is. Wow. Again, really, really cool effect, I think, with this drip dragon. I think he's number 7 or 8 now. So they are multiplying. But I do love that effect, and that's just from that spare resin. So that is the drip dragon. And don't forget, guys, do me a favour if you haven't already, just like and subscribe to the channel. Makes a big difference. So this is Mr. Drip Dragon. And now for the bloom, and I'm just hoping it hasn't blobbed. Again, trying those different effects, you never know until you demold. So I'm going to demold him, and we're going to have a look together. And it's slightly domed, so it's slightly thicker than usual. And as I say, I'm just hoping we haven't had blobbing, and I'm hoping that those 2 or 3 different effects, I suppose, of doing the bloom are visible in this bloom. But I love the back, so if nothing else, I've got a lovely piece just like that. There we go. So a couple of bits to trim off where I've overfilled, but I'm not concerned about that. Let's have a look. Wow, and that is very different. Tiniest bit of blobbing, and that's just along this line here. But again, it's a very different effect. I love the petals on the outer rims with the iridescent white powder, where they're coming through, and then even where they're merging into those sort of deeper blue ones, and then that centre. So as I say, tiniest bit of blobbing, and maybe I could have left it another couple of degrees. I'm still getting used to that resin, but quite a nice bloom. I'm reasonably happy with it. As I say, it would have been better if I didn't get those little bits of blobbing along there. Love the centre. And I think, yeah, it's turned out okay. Not one of my best blooms, but it's still a bloom nonetheless. And I hope you'll agree, the iridescent blue in the petals made a real difference. What I might do is just another one of these, but just use that white bloom, because, as I say, that's come out really well. And some of the centre petals have really bloomed well, but not all of them. So some of them, it almost looks like there's the little rings of colour. And there's a tiny bit of blobbing around the centre as well, but I quite like that. Let me know what you think in comments. It's not my best, it's not my worst. It's a reasonably nice bloom, and I think those outer petals are gorgeous. Look at that, just the depth you get from them. So hope you've liked it. If you have, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.